NBA making its next move to kick Clippers owner Donald Sterling out for good after that racist tirade was captured on audio tape. They have banned him, as you know, for life from attending games or let alone affiliating himself with the team and the league, and also hit him with a $2.5 million fine. Well, today, owners are meeting privately about possibly forcing him out of his ownership. And as you heard from the commissioner earlier this week, he's canvassed those owners, and he believes more than 3/4 of them, if not all of them, will get behind that measure. Well, earlier today, I spoke with Gil Freed. He's an attorney, professor, and chair of sports management at the University of New Haven. Gil, thank you very much for a few minutes.
Thank you.
I heard it said today that for the commissioner, after I think he delivered, well, with maybe the exception of the Sterling's, a near unanimously approved press conference, then now comes the tricky part. And the question is both the enforceability of what he did and also, especially with the litigious Mr. Sterling, what maybe some of his recourses are. So explain to everybody, because when we keep talking about the Constitution, they confuse it from the U.S. Constitution and the NBA Constitution. The NBA's got 30 members here, and it's of a club. But talk about how much that Constitution that every owner signed on to observe, what that Constitution, how much it really will involve and really decide what the next legal steps are in this case.
The Constitution is basically a contract where the owners have agreed to do certain things and act in a certain manner. For example, there's an article that provides protection in case a team becomes insolvent or the owner runs into financial hardship, and that is designed to protect the business interests of the league. There's also a provision in the Constitution that provides for what we call the best interests of the league, and that provides significant power for a commissioner to be able to come forward and say, look, at what you're doing is not in the best interest of the league.
You've got very few people who are going to disagree, I think, with the fact that the conduct of Mr. Sterling, and he acknowledges the voice in the tape was his, especially if you believe the commissioner, his conduct was detrimental to the league. Now, people can debate to the degree, but it was detrimental to the league. Question, though, gets into this is undefined, at least as I understand the Constitution, as it relates to kind of a morals clause. There is none in there. It's one thing if you can't make payroll. It's one thing, you know, if you're fixing games or whatever else. But if you say something, I think we'd all agree, abhorrent statements, he still wasn't technically running his team, at least no evidence suggests, in a racist manner, and he was making payroll. So explain from the league's perspective how they can still argue that's fine, but what he did not only hurt and harmed his brand, they harmed our league, and it made it untenable for him to go forward as owner.
The NBA is looking out for the NBA. Now, while the players are saying he's now the commissioner of the players, he's the commissioner of everyone associated with the NBA.
He works for the owners, Commissioner Silver.
Correct. Now, his take is going to be that there's going to be unlimited potential harm because of the players that are out there and their perspective, because the sponsors and their perspective, because this is the playoff season. What they don't want is something that's going to tarnish that image.
We're going to have very shortly the owners casting a vote. And 29, obviously Mr. Sterling's not going to be a voting person here. 29 of these owners, 3/4 of which have to say, yes, I want to remove Mr. Sterling here and I'm going to follow the lead. And I thought it was very interesting from a strategic standpoint how Mr. Silver said basically he canvassed him. He knows he's got the votes. But if you're an owner right now and you're agreeing to this, are you in effect going into an uncharted territory about what kind of precedent now going forward? If you say something privately, whether it's recorded surreptitiously or not, that's anti-Semitic, that's homophobic, that marginalizes a race, ethnicity, or I don't know, maybe there's stuff we haven't even thought of. Is this a whole new world for an NBA owner?
I think it's not just for an NBA owner. I think it's for every owner of a professional franchise.
Does an owner say, time out here? You know, I signed a contract, but you know, nobody gets to just decide when I have to give up my asset that I bought fair and square. I mean, do you think there's going to be hesitation by owners, or in this case, they got no choice?
I think they will probably not have a choice. They're going to vote. But I think behind closed doors, they're probably going to be trying to craft and use wordsmanship to determine what will be the future for any potential owner in terms of what will be allowed or what will not be allowed. For example, what about players? Will players now be forced to have certain kind of requirements in terms of their conduct? Because if you're saying an owner can't say it, But a player who has greater access to the media, if they could say the same kind of hateful or spiteful kind of comments and they're not going to be punished, then that's going to be an issue. So I think this is going to be an issue for the next collective bargaining agreement,
Yep.
where the owners are going to have to go and take a look at, what they want from the players.
I think there'll be a morals clause probably going forward here that they're going to try and define. Now, Gil, tell me, you're now Mr. Sterling, who's got a history of being one of the most litigious people that there is. He's almost got nothing to lose at this point. If he chooses, and he's indicated through channels that he will not go quietly into the good night, what is his recourse? And explain, I guess, how antitrust works into this conversation.
There is a number of commentators who are saying he could try to bring an antitrust claim. I don't think an antitrust claim is going to be effective at all, because you have to show who is the harmed market in any antitrust claim. So when there's been antitrust cases in the past looking at, for example, broadcast of sports on TV, it was the consumer, the average Joe who might not be able to watch TV because of what a league is doing. In this context, it's one owner.
What could he do?
He can still engage in significant legal gamesmanship that I think will...
And for the viewer, translation is he can have an injunction and hold this thing up here for a year at least, right?
Well, he can try to file an injunction. What he'll have to be able to show is that he's going to have irreparable harm that money cannot compensate for, and that he has a likelihood of winning. The NBA, on the other hand, will try to challenge it, saying they're going to face irreparable financial harm if an injunction is granted, and that they have a better chance of winning. So there's going to be a battle first over injunctions and whether or not they're going to be able to stop him from being involved. Long term, I think there's several other issues that can be taken a look at. For example, if they're not able to force him to sell the team right now, can they say, look we can't force this right now, we want you to sell the team, but until you do that, we're going to make you basically a non-entity, which means we're not going to schedule the Clippers for any games, we're not going to have any broadcasting of any Clippers games.
Grant free agency to every player on the roster, let the coach walk, take away draft picks so they can't even stock it with young talent.
Definitely. There's different techniques that they can engage in to really harm the value.
As everybody saw, you look around from the Oprah Winfreys to the David Geffens to the Mayweathers to every celebrity seemingly in LA, this is the hottest franchise going right now. If he wanted, he'll never get a greater valuation in this auction process. So if he's just looking for the bottom line, I can argue this sale will probably net you more. Your asset, your team is worth more today than it was 2 weeks ago in a funny way.
This might actually increase the value.
We were talking before we came on, but just to complicate further, I know we're up against it on time, but it's California. Both the state and the family situation will also further complicate this, because if Mr. Sterling's wife files for divorce, and I'm surprised she hasn't already, all of a sudden, it's a 50-50 split here for the asset. You can also argue, what did the kid exactly do wrong here in the scenario? Also has a ownership stake, or at least a role in there. Could it be argued that the Sterlings, minus the parent, could be able to operate the team? There's so many interesting questions. Who runs the team? Who dictates and decides what the sale price is? All these things, right, that they still got to figure out.
There's a lot of things that are out there. One thing that I want to throw a wrinkle in is also California has a constitution that applies to private entities. So if he claims this was a First Amendment right, well, then there could be a potential violation of the California Constitution, not the federal Constitution. And so this, I think, is going to be long from a done deal. And this might take years in the legal process, far from over.
Gil, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay, we are going to bring... All right, that was from earlier today. I'm up against it, but prediction? Does Sterling go quietly or no?
Clippers win in the first round and get thrown out in the second round.
Thank you. Do you think we have heard the last of Mr. Sterling, or do you think it's how many, not if he has filing countersuits, et cetera?
He doesn't seem like the person to go quietly into the night. Yes. And I would think we have a long, drawn-out process here.
Unless he finds he can't show his face anywhere, in which case he might just want to resolve this so that he can...
The real bigger issue here is this nostalgia for the metaphors and institutions of slavery. I don't care if it's him or Clinton Bundy wondering about whether slavery was better, or Louis Gohmert saying federal spending is akin to slavery, or George Will saying that Obamacare is equal to the Fugitive Slave Act. It's enough, and I did say this in my HuffPost piece of this week.
You are a media, you know what.
What can I tell you? It's enough about using slavery as a metaphor for contemporary political battles. I don't care if it's Louis Gohmert or Donald Sterling or any of the rest of them. Let's move on and find a better way to talk about it.
Next time we talk, I'm going to have you define vituperation for us from the learned Mr. Ravitch. Thank you so much for appearing here. Andrew, as always, Mr. Media. We will see you, some of us, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Till then, everyone, have a great night.